You just won $1 billion from the lottery. What does the next 24 hours of your life look like? Story 1. The first thing I did when I realized I won $1 billion? I locked the ticket in my cat's carrier. Nobody messes with Mr. Whiskers, not even me. Then I Googled lottery lawyers, accidentally clicked on an ad, and now I'm getting spam emails about buying gold bars. Great start, right? By lunchtime, I was sitting in a lawyer's office trying to sound like I had a clue what I was doing. When he asked if I wanted to set up a trust, I nodded like I totally knew what that was. Spoiler? I didn't. I celebrated with a $7 burrito and then panicked when I realized I'd already spent money without a plan. By bedtime, I'd decided no yachts, no mansions, and no telling anyone. Except the cat. Mr. Whiskers deserves to know he's about to live his best life. Story 2. I didn't scream or faint when I won. Nope, I immediately stuck the ticket in a Ziploc bag and hid it in my cereal box because no one ever eats Raisin Bran but me. Then I Googled how to not screw up winning the lottery and got distracted by a video of a dog learning to surf. Classic me. Once I got back on track, I called a lawyer, who told me to chill out because I still had 60 days before I even saw the money. Chill out? Sir, I just became a walking ATM for every long-lost cousin I've never met. That night, I treated myself to a fancy meal, by which I mean I added guac to my Chipotle order. Winning never tasted so good. Story 3. Step 1. Scream internally. Step 2. Shove the ticket in my sock drawer under a pile of mismatched socks. Step 3. Panic because I don't own a safe. I ended up duct taping the ticket to the back of my fridge because, apparently, my first instinct in a crisis is to MacGyver things. Later, I called a lawyer and tried not to sound like an idiot while asking how to stay rich forever. By evening, I was watching a documentary about rich people going broke, stress-eating a whole bag of Doritos. Lesson learned. Winning the lottery doesn't fix your life. It just makes it a lot weirder. Story 4. When I saw the winning numbers, I immediately dropped my coffee on the floor. I spent the next 20 minutes pacing around, yelling, "Holy crap!" at my toaster like it was a person. Then I hid the ticket in my shoe closet because who would think to look there? I celebrated by buying a single slice of cake and eating it in the car while blasting Queen's "We Are the Champions." By the end of the day, I'd lined up a lawyer and decided I'd tell everyone I got rich from an NFT I invented called Catcoin. Don't ask me to explain it. I'll figure it out later. Story 5. The moment I won, I made a very important decision. I was buying every flavor of Pop-Tarts I'd ever wanted but never splurged on. First, though, I had to secure the ticket. I stuck it in my freezer because apparently frozen pizza boxes are the new Fort Knox. I called a lawyer who asked, "What's your long-term financial strategy?" I said, don't blow it all on Pop-Tarts? He sighed. By the end of the day, I'd spent $3 on fancy coffee, convinced myself it was fine, and made a note to Google what rich people actually do all day. Spoiler, it's probably not eating Pop-Tarts. Story 6. The ticket sat on the table in front of me, $1 billion piece of paper, and I couldn't even look at it. Once I was sure I wasn't hallucinating, I snapped pictures, emailed them to myself, and signed the back. Then I locked it in a drawer and started researching how to not become another broke lottery winner horror story. By noon, I'd rented a safety deposit box and hidden the ticket there, my heart pounding the whole time. I spent the rest of the day calling lawyers and financial advisors, all while crafting a plausible story for why I'd suddenly have money. Something simple. Inheritance or a tech investment. That evening, I celebrated with a microwave dinner, too paranoid to step outside. Winning the lottery felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. I knew it could change everything, but one wrong step, and I'd fall harder than I'd ever thought possible. Story 7. I checked the numbers 4 times before it hit me. I was a billionaire. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a Ziploc bag, slid the ticket inside, and shoved it into my home safe. I snapped a picture for backup and immediately started searching for lawyers. By mid-afternoon, I'd booked an appointment with a firm specializing in high-net-worth clients. I drove straight to the bank, rented a safety deposit box, and locked the ticket inside. I told no one. Not my family, not my friends, not even my partner. Every lottery winner goes broke story played in my head like a warning. That night, I ate a cold sandwich and drafted a plan. Anonymous donations, modest living, and a carefully crafted story about smart investments. Winning felt less like a dream come true and more like a high-stakes puzzle I had to solve to protect my future. Story 8. Winning $1 billion wasn't the fireworks and champagne moment I always imagined. It was more like getting hit by a truck full of anxiety. I spent the first hour staring at the ticket on my kitchen counter, convinced I was about to have a heart attack. Once the shock wore off, I grabbed my car keys and drove to the bank to rent a safety deposit box. The whole way there, I kept thinking someone would rear-end me or that I'd drop the ticket and it would blow away in the wind. Once the ticket was secured, I parked in a random lot and started Googling lottery lawyers near me. I called a firm and was transferred to some partner who spoke in a way that made me feel like he handled billion-dollar payouts daily. By evening, I'd assembled a list of professionals to contact and made sure the ticket was photographed and backed up in a cloud account only I could access. Dinner was leftovers, and I avoided my phone entirely. I didn't want my friends or family sensing anything was up. The weirdest part? I didn't feel like celebrating. I spent most of the night replaying every lottery winner goes broke story I'd ever heard. The idea of blowing through $1 billion terrified me more than living paycheck to paycheck ever had. Before bed, I drafted a plan. Small trust funds for family, a few splurges for myself, and everything else invested or donated anonymously. It wasn't a party, but it felt like the first smart decision of my new, very secret life. Story 9. I stared at the ticket, my breath caught in my chest, unable to believe it. $1 billion. The first thing I did was lock it in a Ziploc bag, shove it into a hardcover book, and stash it on the top shelf of my closet. Then I Googled lottery lawyer near me and made a call. By noon, I'd rented a safety deposit box and secured the ticket there, taking photos beforehand as backups. I didn't tell a soul. Not my parents, not my best friend, not even my partner. The paranoia hit hard. I spent hours researching how to stay anonymous and how to protect myself legally. Dinner that night was a cold sandwich because I was too wired to cook, my mind buzzing with thoughts of trusts, investments, and quiet generosity. By bedtime, I had a rough plan. Set up funds for family, live like a millionaire, not a billionaire, and start fresh somewhere no one knew me. Winning didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like stepping into a minefield where one wrong move could ruin everything. Story 10. When I realized the ticket was real, I didn't feel excited. I felt terrified. $1 billion wasn't just life-changing, it was dangerous. I photographed the ticket, wrapped it in plastic, and locked it in my desk drawer. Then I spent hours researching lawyers and financial advisors. By lunchtime, I'd rented a safety deposit box and stashed the ticket there. Every step of the way, I felt like someone was watching me. I told no one, not even my family. Instead, I crafted a plan: trusts for relatives, anonymous donations to charities, and a simple lie about a lucky tech investment. That night, I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Winning felt like standing in quicksand. One wrong move, and everything could collapse before I even touched the money. Story 11. When I realized I'd won, I locked the ticket in a drawer, sat down at my desk, and Googled how to not screw up winning the lottery. It was surreal, like trying to look calm while your brain is on fire. Every guide I read said the same thing: don't tell anyone, lawyer up, and don't spend a dime until you have a plan. So, I spent the morning calling law firms, using vague phrases like hypothetically large sums and discrete asset management. The lawyers didn't ask too many questions. After securing an appointment, I photocopied the ticket, put it in a Ziploc, and stashed it in the freezer. I'd seen a YouTube video where someone did that, and it suddenly felt genius. Then I called in sick to work and spent the afternoon deep cleaning my apartment. Like clutter was the only thing standing between me and financial stability. By nightfall, I had a list of rules. No social media, no extravagant purchases for 6 months. Tell no one, not even family, until I had a trust set up. I ate a frozen pizza and watched a show about ancient civilizations, all while my brain buzzed with questions like, what if I lose the ticket? And, will this ruin my relationships? Winning felt like holding a grenade, exciting but terrifying if you made one wrong move. Story 12. I couldn't stop laughing. The ticket was real, the numbers matched, and I was suddenly $1 billion richer. But instead of joy, I felt like a criminal with stolen goods. My first instinct was to call my mom, but then I imagined her telling everyone in town by lunch the next day. Instead, I locked the ticket in a file cabinet, grabbed my laptop, and Googled lottery winner horror stories. That sobered me up fast. Within hours, I'd contacted a lawyer who specialized in handling lottery claims and booked an appointment under a fake name. I didn't tell my partner or my best friend. The less they knew, the safer we all were. I spent the afternoon making a list of expenses, paying off student loans, setting up trust funds, and buying a modest house far from where anyone knew me. Dinner was takeout, and while eating, I made myself a promise. No crazy splurges, no yachts, no ridiculous mansions. Instead, I'd live like I had a few million and quietly enjoy the freedom of never working again. That night, I hid the ticket under my mattress, then tossed and turned until sunrise, wondering if my life had just gotten better, or much, much worse. Story 13. When I realized the numbers matched, I didn't scream or celebrate. I froze. My hands trembled as I photographed the ticket and emailed it to myself before tucking it into a fireproof safe. The first thing I Googled was lottery winners' horror stories, and the results terrified me. I immediately called a lawyer specializing in high-net-worth clients and booked an appointment. The rest of the day was a blur. I rented a safety deposit box to secure the ticket, canceled all social media accounts, and ignored every incoming call. By dinner, I drafted a list of rules. No public announcements, no impulsive spending, and no telling anyone until the money was secure. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Winning $1 billion didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a responsibility. I knew that from this moment forward, my life would never be simple again. Story 14. The winning numbers were still on the screen when I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the nearest office supply store. I bought a fireproof lockbox and 3 USB drives, then spent the rest of the afternoon creating digital backups of the ticket. Every guide online said the same thing: document everything and keep it secure. By the time I was done, I had backups stashed in my car, my closet, and even my neighbor's storage shed, just in case. After that, I went into stealth mode. I canceled my weekend plans, deactivated my social media accounts, and texted my boss to say I'd caught the flu. The ticket was locked away, and I spent the evening researching lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors. It felt like preparing for battle, not winning the lottery. Around midnight, I opened a bottle of wine and allowed myself one splurge, a designer watch I'd wanted since high school. It was under $10,000, so it felt safe. But even as I clicked buy, I felt a pang of guilt, like I was already losing control. Winning wasn't the euphoric moment I'd imagined. It was like being handed a loaded gun and hoping I didn't shoot myself in the foot. Story 15. When I realized I'd won, my first thought wasn't yachts or mansions. It was, how do I not screw this up? I signed the ticket immediately, stuffed it in a Ziploc bag, and hid it in my sock drawer while I figured out my next steps. By mid-morning, I'd photographed it, backed it up online, and locked it in a safety deposit box at the bank. The paranoia set in fast. I spent the afternoon researching lawyers and financial advisors, carefully avoiding searches that might look suspicious. I told no one, not my family, not my closest friends, and definitely not my coworkers. When my boss called to ask why I wasn't in, I mumbled something about a stomach bug. By nightfall, I had a plan. Tell everyone I'd made a smart tech investment that paid off big. Live modestly. Set up anonymous trusts for family and charities. Winning felt like holding a grenade. I was terrified of making one wrong move and blowing everything apart. Story 16. The first thing I did was hyperventilate. I had to sit down on my bathroom floor just to stop my head from spinning. When I calmed down, I triple-checked the ticket, the numbers, and the date, even going so far as to call the state lottery hotline. It was real. I'd won $1 billion. My initial thought was to call my sister, but I knew she'd tell her boyfriend, who'd tell his entire poker group before I even finished the call. So I told no one. I wrapped the ticket in plastic, placed it in a hardcover book, and shoved it into the middle of my bookshelf. Then I started Googling. Within an hour, I'd booked an appointment with a lawyer who worked with high-net-worth individuals and emailed a financial advisor with "urgent" in the subject line. I didn't even eat that day. I was too wired to think about food. By the time the sun went down, I'd made an exhaustive to-do list, figure out how to stay anonymous, create a trust to claim the money, and come up with a believable lie for why I was suddenly rich. Bitcoin investment felt plausible, though I hated the idea of pretending I was some tech bro. That night I sat in bed with my laptop looking up properties in small, quiet towns where no one would ask too many questions. Winning didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like the start of a very delicate balancing act. Story 17. The numbers didn't just match. They screamed at me from the screen. I sat there for what felt like an hour, gripping the ticket like it might disappear if I loosened my grip. First thing I did was snap photos of the ticket, both sides, and save them in an encrypted cloud folder. Then I wrapped the ticket in a plastic sleeve and locked it in my kitchen safe. I spent the day Googling how to stay anonymous and found a lawyer specializing in high-profile cases. I booked an appointment under a fake name, then drove to the bank and rented a safety deposit box. Every move felt like a spy operation, my heart racing with every step. Dinner was takeout eaten in front of my laptop as I researched how to set up trusts, manage taxes, and plan long-term investments. By the time I crawled into bed, I'd made a vow. No crazy spending, no social media hints, and no telling anyone until I had a rock-solid plan. Winning felt less like freedom and more like a secret I'd have to guard with my life. Story 18. I didn't scream or cry when I realized I'd won. I just stared at the ticket for a solid 10 minutes, paralyzed by the sheer enormity of it. $1 billion wasn't just life-changing, it was planet-changing. After the shock wore off, I grabbed a pen, signed the back of the ticket, and stuck it in an envelope. Then I drove to my bank and rented a safety deposit box, acting as casual as possible. Once the ticket was secured, I sat in my car and Googled lottery winners who lost everything. That was enough to send me spiraling into paranoia. I called a lawyer, who agreed to meet me the next day, and spent the rest of the afternoon researching how to set up a blind trust. By evening, I'd decided that no one outside of my future legal and financial team would know. Not my parents, not my siblings, not even my partner. I celebrated with a slice of pizza and a beer, feeling more exhausted than elated. Winning wasn't the fireworks moment I'd always imagined. It was a logistical nightmare with life-or-death stakes. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized the first thing I wanted to buy wasn't a mansion or a yacht. It was peace of mind. Story 19. The shock didn't hit me until I was staring at the winning numbers for the third time. My legs felt like jelly as I grabbed the ticket, stuffed it into an envelope, and locked it in my desk. Then I spent the next few hours frantically searching online for lottery lawyers and wealth advisors. By midday, I'd secured an appointment and stashed the ticket in a safety deposit box. I told no one, not my family, not my best friend. I drafted a plan to keep my win under wraps. A modest house, quiet investments, and a fabricated story about some lucky Bitcoin investments. That night, I ate frozen pizza and barely tasted it, my mind spinning with what-ifs. Winning the lottery wasn't the joyful fantasy I'd imagined. It was a balancing act between secrecy and survival. Story 20. When I checked the ticket, I had to read it 5 times before it sunk in. I wasn't just rich, I was unimaginably rich. My hand shook as I took a picture of the ticket, emailed it to myself, and locked the physical copy in my bedroom safe. Then, I sat at my dining table, staring into space, while my mind raced with possibilities and fears. I spent the morning compiling a list of professionals to call: lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. By lunch, I'd booked appointments with the best ones I could find online. I told my boss I had food poisoning and couldn't come to work, knowing full well I'd never go back. The rest of the day was spent planning. I made a list of debts to pay off, family members to help, and charities to support. But I also wrote down strict rules for myself: no impulsive purchases, no public announcements, and no posting on social media. Dinner was a microwave meal because I didn't want to risk going out and running into anyone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Winning $1 billion felt like holding a golden ticket that could unlock every dream I'd ever had, but also like a curse that could ruin my life if I wasn't careful. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't thinking about yachts or private islands. I was thinking about how to keep my win a secret forever. Story 21. It hit me like a lightning bolt. One minute, I was eating cereal and checking the numbers out of habit. The next, I was holding a ticket worth $1 billion. My first thought wasn't about what to buy. It was about how to survive this without losing my mind. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom, not my best friend, not even my dog. Instead, I locked the ticket in my glove compartment and drove to the nearest big city to rent a safety deposit box. After securing the ticket, I parked in a random lot and started making calls. I found a lawyer who specialized in lottery claims and booked a consultation for the next morning. Then I sat in my car, eating a granola bar, and started drafting a cover story for my inevitable wealth. Tech investment sounded good, vague, believable, and boring enough to keep people from asking questions. By the time I got home, I was physically and mentally drained. I ate some leftovers, avoided my phone, and made a promise to myself: no sudden changes, no flashy purchases, and absolutely no telling anyone until everything was locked down. Winning the lottery wasn't a dream come true. It was the start of the most careful game of chess I'd ever play.